Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you today from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey. Absolutely delighted to welcome Elliot Kallen for the 14th inspiring interview in the Grief and Rebirth podcast Rebirth series. Elliot has run Prosperity Financial Group, which is a wealth management firm, for over 30 years, and he is also the co-founder and president of A Brighter Day, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping teens manage depression and stress. Elliot and his wife started A Brighter Day in 2015 in memory of their youngest son, Jake, who committed suicide when he was 19 years old. So they have sadly had their own personal experience with profound grief and rebirth. Now they are helping others who are struggling. You may be surprised to learn that every year, millions of teenagers struggle with thoughts of depression, deep sadness, isolation, stress, and the feeling of helplessness. And because of their mental health issues, thousands commit suicide, making it one of the leading causes of death among teens in the United States. Sadly, and too often, the parents of these teens are the last to learn about their child's mental problems, and sometimes it is too late to act. A Brighter Day aims to stop teen suicide by educating teens and their parents about mental disorders and providing resources that they can use to reach out and communicate when depression and stress are affecting either their own or the lives of those around them. I'm looking forward to talking with Elliot about A Brighter Day's efforts in fighting depression and teen suicide, warning signs to look for that indicate depression and stress in a teen, strategies parents can use to help their teens manage mental disorders and build self-confidence, and more, for what will surely be a very informative interview that can help prevent the devastation of teen suicide. Hi, Elliot. A warm welcome to Grief and Rebirth.
It's great to be here, Irene. Thank you. You're in my old stomping grounds. I'm a graduate of Mountain High School in West Orange.
I'm bringing you back all these memories.
There it is.
Right? And where are you now again?
California.
California. You went to, should I say, brighter vistas?
Well, it's a beautiful place to live here in Northern California. I'm a big wine collector, but it's ridiculously overpriced, and it's only crazy people want to come here.
Oh, I mean, I have to say the thing that I love the most about living up here, I'm a Florida. I came from Florida, and I love the change of seasons. I even don't mind winter. And we are having the most magnificent fall this year. Just absolutely, Elliot, you would love it. It's stunning.
I bet I would.
Turning colors, and it's been longer. It's been a longer season because, of course, we have a few problems with climate and everything's lasting a little longer, but I'm not complaining about these beautiful leaves that are hanging out. So let's start with this question. Sadly, the motivation for A Brighter Day came from the suicide of your son, Jake, in 2015, while he was attending the University of Montana. Can you please tell us about Jake? Explain what led up to his unexpected suicide, and share how this inspired the founding of A Brighter Day.
Absolutely, and thank you, Irene, again. So just to put this together on how it started, Jake was a great kid, had a lot of friends. He was athletic. He played on 2 different hockey teams. His jersey is actually retired at the University of Montana, hanging from the rafters.
Wow.
Setting all types of records. It's hanging here at the local ice rink as well. He was just a wonderful, wonderful kid. and looking back, I can see all types of things, but going through that, he's just one of those good kids, sometimes kept his distance from people, but had a lot of friends. So it was a Thursday night. What he did is he put his phone down, made his bed, no alcohol, no drugs, and he walked up to the highway and jumped in front of an ongoing truck.
Oh my God.
And all day Friday, we were frantically looking for him because his phone was turned off.
Oh my God.
No teenager turns off their phone. And so we were looking all around and for him, and at 6:30 at night, Federal Express showed up with a 6-page suicide note. And in it was horrible. And in it, he said, in the first main paragraph, "Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I never would have told you how I felt. I never would have asked for your help. And I never would have taken your help."
Ugh.
And that started the ball rolling of the next morning, caught an early morning flight at 6:30 to Washington, drove over to Montana to claim his body. You could imagine as a parent, seeing the human body in a 100,000-pound truck at 60 miles an hour, they don't go together. And so there was that. The school did a wonderful thing, retiring his jersey and having an entire program for him on Sunday. And on Monday, we came back to California for burial. It was flying home, Irene, on the Southwest Airlines with his body underneath that I kept reading that paragraph of the 6 pages over and over and realized that we need to do something.
Right.
We need to take action. We cannot let other families go through the devastation. That's the word you used, and that is the right word, that other families.
Oh my God, horrible.
And so we formed a charity, A Brighter Day. My wife and I formed a charity, A Brighter Day, with the goal of bringing resources, originally created resources, originally to teens, but now through for teens and parents, with the goal of stopping teen suicide.
Wow.
And we started by doing it with music. We used music and Battle of the Bands, a very old concept with teen bands playing for teens. In the first 3-4 years, we gave out a few thousand backpacks filled with these resources. And then COVID
Now,
hit.
what kinds of resources were you putting in those backpacks?
It was all original material for teens, mostly for teens, not parents. So we had articles for teens to help them if they need help, how to talk to their family, how to talk to teachers, how to talk to their friends if it's happening to their friends. We knew parents were going to read this, but they were all written, not stress balls and cutesy stuff. They were original, serious resources. And we weren't finding these backpacks at all on the ground outside the concerts. They were being taken home. And then COVID hit, we had to go virtual, and we had a teen talent showcase where people get our resources, and we had 14,000 people view our teen talent showcase.
Wow.
And we thought, wow, there's something here. And as again, we morphed and reinvented ourselves, we realized that the best way to get to teens is through their parents. That if we can help their parents reach their teens, then we can cut off that box of blackness and emptiness that teens reach before they reach it. And so today, 6 years into this charity, Irene, we now produce original content every other week. We have articles going out all around the country. We have it going to a mailing list. We're on every social media platform and wire service that you can imagine for parents. We have a parent survival toolkit, and we have a teen survival toolkit on the website. Everything there is free at abrighterday.info for anybody that wants it. No advertising is on there. And just imagine now how we've grown and how important this issue is, because sadly, it's super topical. So like I said, in the first 3-4 years of the charity, we touched about 2,000 people. Last month, 4,000 people downloaded our resources. Last month.
Amazing. Do you work with a lot of therapists and do you get advice from professionals for what you do when you're giving advice to parents and all of that?
Yeah, yes and no. We are very pro therapy. There are a lot of therapists that, especially since COVID, they have no longer any more time or free time on their hands. They're not interested in this. If your child's in crisis, at least in California, it could take 6 to 10 weeks to get an appointment, which we think we've solved that. We find that unacceptable. 10 weeks for a child that's cutting himself or thinking about suicide is eternity.
Please.
We've come up with several solutions. There's no one answer for every teen, but I'll bring you to the solution side of what we've done now.
Right.
On that. Imagine how teens communicate. They don't communicate the way you and I do. They communicate a lot by texting. So we now have a 24/7 texting program works in all 50 states, where a teen can, or a parent, it can be anybody. They type in the word brighter, BRIGHTER, to 741-741, and in 5 minutes or less, they will have the ability to talk to a counselor for up to 40 minutes, 7 days a week.
That's fantastic.
So we're changing lives with this. We've already got conversations, people that said, thank you. My wife's dealt with her teen's death and now has somebody to talk to, which is amazing. My family's done this. It's amazing. If that doesn't work, then we have tag team with BetterHelp, and we can get within 7 days a Zoom with a licensed local therapist throughout, again, all 50 states.
That's amazing.
This is for teens and parents, but it's just fabulous what we're doing. So no longer 7 to 10 weeks, but it's a Zoom program, but it's all 50 states. And these are licensed people that they'll be talking to. And if that doesn't work, we signed a contract with a third-party inpatient behavioral program they're probably in 20 states right now, that we can help them out. And even the Zoom program, the texting program is free for everybody. The Zoom program costs money for a patient, but we have a scholarship fund that we will pay for up to 5 sessions for anybody in all 50 states. Which
that's fantastic, Elliot.
And we picked 5 because they said that's a normal number of Zoom sessions is 4 to 5. That's how we picked that. We pay for it, so nothing out of pocket. And for most people on the inpatient, they're covered by their own insurance, medical insurance. So they didn't need us for them. So we're helping out to get teens, even parents of teens, out of the crisis stage and into the therapy stage, because that's what they need.
That's fantastic. Can you highlight for us? I'm sure we have a lot of very interested listeners with this. So can you highlight some of the worrisome warning signs of depression and stress in teens?
Yeah,
what do you look for?
There are 2 major warning signs. And I want to put a caveat here, Irene, because I know you have an audience filled with lots of professionally trained people and lots of healers. I was a dumb teenager. I was not a depressed teenager. I did lots of dumb things that teenage boys do, and they just do, especially boys, because they're just sometimes just real rocks for brains growing up.
And they want to be cool.
They want to be cool, and they think they're smart. And like every teenager, there's nothing else to learn as a teenager until you learn.
Right.
But the difference between a depressed teenager or a teenager walking down the line of depression and just a dumb, normal teenager is just a shade of gray. It's a dotted line. So because they have these symptoms doesn't make them depressed. But it should make the parents engage with them and find out if they're depressed. And we can talk about that as we go. So the first thing that teenagers do when they're depressed is they withdraw. They begin a process of withdrawal from their friends, from the classes, and from their parents. They really just don't want to communicate anymore. Now I've got,
but now isn't that like a lot of kids just withdraw from their parents because they're maturing and they're grunting? They don't even say hello, and then they're going into their room. So how do you know the difference?
That's why
between the grunts and the real problem.
And that's why you've got to be a good question answer. We'll get to that, I know, but you've got to be a good question asker, I should say, because there is a difference between. Look, I've got a 29-year-old twin son. He's just finishing up getting his second PhD at the University of Wisconsin. Super bright kid. And when I ask him how was his week, he answers fine. How's your day? Good. And I have to remind him, can you please not answer me monosyllabically? I paid a lot of money. I deserve polysyllabic answers.
I love that.
And so, but he's a normal teenager. He's not depressed. He's probably got anxiety because he's getting into the job market now, but that's very normal anxiety, but not depression. Right? And we talk about this all the time. He and I do constantly because I want to see if he's okay. And maybe I know and maybe I don't know if he's okay at the end of the day. But withdrawal is a big part of it. The second big issue, and by the way, food withdrawal is part of withdrawal as well, but that's not to be confused necessarily with a normal eating disorder, but they do exist. The second part of this sleep pattern disorder, they sleep less. So right when my son came home for Christmas break, shortly before he took his life, he was going to bed at midnight and going in bed at midnight, but up till 3 a.m. playing around on his cell phone. He was withdrawing from us and playing around. I'd use a more coarse word, but we're on the air, with his cell phone in meaningless ways. And so you've got to look for that too, because he couldn't sleep anymore. And when one of his friends interviewed me for his school newspaper a year later with an unveiling that we had for him, and said, I want to tell you something, that we didn't understand that Jake seemed to always be asleep when we were awake, and we seemed to be awake when he was asleep towards the end of his life. And that's very normal. Their pattern is highly disrupted. So that's part of it. And then they withdraw from the classes that they even like or don't like. So the ones they don't like, they completely withdraw from. The ones they like, they begin to get self-destructive with themselves. And that's important to know, because if there's no future, then self-destructing doesn't mean anything.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
So those are the big three patterns that you want to look for. Now, let me lead you into, before you ask another question, and that is for parents, how can they learn the difference between them? What's a normal pattern for a teenager and what is a dangerous pattern for a teenager? If I can answer that question that I know you want to ask.
Absolutely. You read my mind.
Okay. So I just got asked on a podcast yesterday, how can we teach teachers to be better askers to find out if their student is depressed? And that's I think the wrong question to ask, because teachers are overworked, underpaid, 20 to 30 people in the class. It's not going to happen. You as a parent, single or married with two parents, right, need to learn how to ask great questions and then find out the great answers. And let me ask you some questions that are typical. Most parents want to be good parents, and they'll just say, how was school today? And they get this monosyllabic grunt, groan, whatever it is. It was good. Yeah. It's better to ask, what are your favorite classes? And then why? Who are your favorite teachers? And why? Who's your least favorite teacher? And why? Who's your least favorite class? And why? What is your least favorite class? And why? And then, I know you're really struggling in algebra. We talked about this last week. How was your week in algebra this week? Can I get some help for you? Rather than putting their hands up saying, I'm just dumb at math, I give up. A parent can be in front of that. So number one thing a parent can do is ask great questions. So where do they ask great questions, you might say? And there are two wonderful places to ask great questions. And the first one is the dinner table. So, Irene, the cell phone in my hand is the worst invention for teenagers today. Now, can they get everything answered for their school about, why the fifth president, who was the vice president for the fifth president? They can get all those on Google. Those are good things. But what that does, it isolates teens from everybody else, especially social media. And kids are no longer on Facebook. You and I are, but they're on Instagram and TikTok and other Snapchat and other things. And what these have taught our kids is they've taught them that everybody's having a better time in life but them. Because the social media for teens is a highlight reel of everybody else's life but their own. Even my kids came home shortly before my son took his life, that Christmas break, and we're in California, so a lot of families go to Lake Tahoe for Christmas break, or they go to Hawaii. And they asked me the question, Dad, are we the only family not going to Hawaii or Tahoe?
Wow.
And there were tons of kids at home, but they felt like they were isolated. So for parents, make your dinners cell phone free. Put them in a basket, put them anywhere. No texting, no talking to grandma during dinner. None of that stuff. It's got to be just you and them, because questions will arise and statements will come out of the quietness of your dinner table. And then you as a parent have to learn how to ask right questions. And by the way, we put all of these online at abrighterday.info. We've put out questions. We put out how to be a better parent and ask these questions. You as a grandparent, Irene, can ask great questions, and maybe just you'll discover something that you never knew about your grandchild.
I have already found that, but I wait till I have one of the boys by myself and I have great conversations with them, and I ask questions and all of that kind of thing. And I understand. And recently, one of my grandsons confided something to me, which was a little bit of a red flag. I was able to give my son a little heads up about it. So yes, as a grandparent, you can absolutely, sometimes they talk to you more than they'll talk to their parents, I think.
Oh, for sure. We're all human. Let me give you the second way, because the first way is dinner table, and there's nothing that's going to beat that. But we live in a world today where there's organized sports every day of the week and after school clubs. Nobody goes out and plays on a basketball court on weekends, pick up with their friends, and all the things that you and I grew up in, that for socialization reasons is sad that they're all gone.
Right.
But they are gone. But what parents are doing most of the time is driving them to an event.
You're absolutely right.
So that is an outstanding time to have a conversation. Turn the radio off, get you and your teens to take out the iPods and just have a conversation about anything, what the school is. Start with a movie that you just saw. Start with anything, but to ask in-depth questions. And you may want to ask about their friends even, because they would be more willing to talk about their best friends and how they're feeling, if you even know who their best friends are. But ask them to talk about their best friends, because they could be third-partying themselves by talking about their best friends. For instance, Irene is not doing well in biology, and she's barely showing up. And they're really talking about themselves, that they don't like biology, they're not doing well, and have started to hang out by not showing up.
Very interesting. Those are great tips. I think a lot of people are going to pass this interview around. You ought to hear this for your teenager. So talk to us about mental disorders and building self-confidence. What do parents do about that besides talking to the kids? Is that the best way to do that? Because kids have there can be more going on than just, the withdrawal. Is that a part of mental disorder? How do you separate it? How do you separate out a kid who's just having anxiety and going through all these, depression and going through all this, than a kid who's bipolar or having other serious issues?
Absolutely. And I want to caveat this with you, that the broad title of mental health or mental disorder is so broad that you can go on with thousands of people throughout the country. And of course, we try to focus on depression, stress, and anxiety. But lots of boys, this is more boys than girls, lots of boys, and including me, they're ADD or ADHD. We just can get all, the old phrase used to be anal, we get compartmentalized in what we do. And my older son is just like that. He's very compartmentalized. And if you don't talk to him within the right compartment, he can't reach out to you on that. And I'll give you an example, that when he was in 10th grade and playing hockey, he started to cry one day after hockey practice. And we're talking about what's going on, what happened.
Wait a minute, I just want to stop you right there. Here's a 10th grader crying, where kids grow up in a world today, they say, stop, you're crying. I mean, what's wrong with you? You're too sensitive. You're too this, you're too that.
Well, it turned out that he had a flashing thought of jumping off the top of the ice rink with the stands and just jumping. He looked down and he thought about it, and it got him so upset. He had to stop in his tracks.
My God.
We got him immediate psychotherapy help with a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. And thankfully, he was an older gentleman who was very, very experienced. And the first thing he did was play chess with him. He figured him out immediately. We talked to all of his family. He said, I want everybody to leave. He took out the chessboard and they just played some chess. And by doing that, because he realized from his own experience that my son put everything in a box. And by unraveling the box, he could unravel it during chess. So after 3 sessions, he called me in and he said, okay, Cody doesn't need to come back here at all. I gave him the tool he needs, that when he's feeling sad, to use this tool. I said, great, what's the tool that you gave him? He said, because he's very good at math. He's, like I said, he's in dual PhD program. He's going to divide pi, consistently divide, pi across all the digits. And I think 6 months, I asked him how that was. 6 months later, I asked him how that's going with pi. How many digits out are you now by 3.1415 out? And he said, Dad, I'm about 16 digits out. And I thought, wow. I said, so when do you do this? He said, when I'm alone. And I just need to get refocused. And it refocuses, the math refocuses me. Now that's him. He's very spatial, exceptionally spatial. And that would be the right term. My daughter, she's his twin sister. Everything you want to know about her is on her sleeve. She tells you everything. Totally, if she's depressed, you're going to know it in 5 seconds. And we talk about these things. And she got some serious help and got some tools on how to deal with it. So everybody is different. But again, you cannot discover this without good conversation. And not everybody should be in front of a psychologist, because some kids will just close down. Right now, yesterday I had a great Saturday. I had a great phone call, and a man called me up and he said, "Hey, are you a brighter day?" And I said, "I am." It's about 8:30 in the morning, and he said, "Hey, I just want you to know I made a donation to your website, but I misspelled my email address, and I put, instead of SBC Global, I put SPB. Can you fix it?" And I said, "Of course." I said, "You mind telling me how you heard about us?" He said, "I saw a Facebook post from you with Dave Righetti, one of the Yankees pitching coaches, Yankees great pitchers, on there talking about mental health for teens. And I went to your website and started to do some research. And I want you to know that my very close friend," and he wanted to use the word girlfriend, but he didn't. He's an adult. We don't know whether to say woman friend, girlfriend, best friend.
Significant other.
It's other, right? And he said her son took his life about a year ago, and she's the one that discovered the body. And she has been so distraught that she cannot go back to work, and she's on SDI disability payments, and we're not sure she's ever going to get off of it. And I went to your website, and she's been going through counseling the entire year, live counseling or Zoom counseling, that it's just not working. And I saw you had a chat program on a cell phone chat program, text chat program, and I got her on it. And she's been chatting with somebody every day of the week since I put her on. She discovered it and I put her on it. And she now feels like a new person, that she's coming to grips with it, that she's beginning to think it's not her fault of what happened. And she's talking about going back into the workforce. And it's all because of texting.
Wow.
So everybody reacts. Some people need that live in-body. Some people, Zoom is perfect. Some people chatting on a text program is perfect. And some people just reading our resources and getting our information is perfect. You cannot, there's no one size that fits all. And that's why we came out with all these.
Well, it sort of fits the profile of this podcast, because I have all these people who I interview, and it's not a one size fits all. Find the person or the philosophy or whatever that can work for you. They're out there, just like what you're doing. I also want to ask you about, how do you help kids build self-confidence? Because that is another big issue. They're getting depressed, they're going through all this, they have all this anxiety, and you're talking to them. Do you have any special tools that you recommend to help kids feel better about themselves?
So let's go back to the parent again, because this is part of good parenting here. So, when I was a young person growing up, or I was new into the business world, let's say in my 20s, all these consultants would come in and they'd say, you need to know what you don't do well and improve upon it. And that will make you a better worker, better boss, better manager. With that it is. And it turns out they were 100% or 180 degrees off on the right answer. We know in business that you need to find out what you do really well and build on that, and find out what you don't do well and hire for that. That's a good owner. And I own several organizations, and that's what you do. For instance, I'm a very big picture person. I love that. If you're going to ask me to do all your detail work, oh my goodness, you're going to go out of your mind. I'll go out of my mind. All right. So I hire people all around me to do my detail work. Well, when you're a teenager or even younger, because it does start even younger, and you focus on what your teenager or your 10-year-old does poorly, what you end up doing is you're reinforcing the poor and minimizing the good. And it shows really more as they get older. So as a parent, good conversation is, what do you like? And the team might say, well, I really like math. I love math. But boy, do I hate Mrs. Baldwin in science. She's terrible. Do you know she picks on me all the time? So now you've just learned something, that you should think about math constantly, because they enjoy it, and they even maybe use the word love. And what are you going to do about science? Do you go talk to Mrs. Baldwin? Do you find a science tutor, or do you really begin to realize that my child does not have a good aptitude for science. So what can we do to get through this and not focus on it? And that's you as a parent have to begin to make those, delineations and good decisions, because for my daughter who got a D in chemistry her sophomore year in high school.
So you said as an example, what did you do to get her through that and not feel lousy about herself because she doesn't deal in chemistry?
We got a tutor immediately through a tutor service to get her to, but at the end of the day, we got the school to agree through a lot of conversations that she could take another science class over, but not chemistry, because that's the one she hated. So I said, which one would you like to take? And she said, geology. I'd love to do that. So she took geology and she got an A, because clouds and the earth and fossils were super cool to her, but formulas and memorizing them, organic and inorganic, and octagonal pictures that she didn't understand, she just couldn't grasp.
She's my kind of girl. Yeah. I feel the same way. And you have a very heartening story about a young girl who was laying on top of your son's grave. Could you share that with us?
Absolutely. So my son is buried in one of the largest cemeteries in the country, in an area called Tranquility. It's a headstone on the ground. And
in California.
In California, right in Lafayette, California, where I live now. And I had a good friend of mine who went to a funeral, a lawyer friend of mine, went to a funeral in the same area on a Sunday and called me up early afternoon and said, "Hey, Elliot, I passed by Jake's grave." And this was before the headstone was even down. So this is just, you always can tell a new grave, a relatively new grave. And he said, "She's laying on top of Jake's grave. So you might want to go there." And I immediately I was home. I got in my car. It's about a 15-minute drive. And I went over there and I said, "Hey, how you doing? And what's going on?" And she said, "Jake, I've been thinking about taking my life."
Oh my.
And I knew Jake. I said, "You did?" She said, "Yes, I went to the junior prom with his best friend." And I didn't even know that.
Did you know who his best friend was even?
Yes, I knew that.
Okay.
That I knew. So I didn't know he had a girlfriend or anything. He said, "Yeah, we dated. We were just more friends than we were anything else, not girlfriend, boyfriend." He said, "I just want you to know that I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jake or Jake's death, because I see and I've heard what Jake's death has done to your family. I don't want to do that to my family. I need help. Can you help get me help?"
Wow.
So I reached out to her father. I brought her back to my house. The father came over. He was available. He came over and we just spent the afternoon talking, and he got her into counseling right away. And we started to go out to lunch, the three of us, the dad, myself, and the daughter. Every 4, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we'd go out to lunch and just talk. And she had some self-esteem issues. She went through some boys that were a little bit abusive, because that's a lot of times what you do when your self-esteem is down. You find people that treat you poorly. It confirms your self-esteem. Boy, is that a black hole, spiral down. And today, she's 27. I see her on Facebook. She is the loveliest young woman in a good place and looks like she's getting engaged.
Oh, wow. What a good story.
It all started with a really negative tragedy that turned into everybody pulling all forms of counseling together and help and support. And this woman is a whole different place now.
How wonderful. That is wonderful. I think we've talked about some of the terrific resources your organization provides in formats that teenagers can understand, like with the texting and all. And you help them in multiple ways with their mental health issues. But how do you do all this while allowing them to retain their privacy and their dignity? They're very private. They don't want anyone to know their business.
Teens, again, that's part of being withdrawn, but I was like that too. From a good conversation with parents, again, I'm going back to the parents. We know that your teen may need help based on what the answers are. So then it becomes a suggestion versus a demand. So we advise parents in our Parent Survival Toolkit to be as non-judgmental as humanly possible. Because if you judge and I say, "Well, if you only studied more, you wouldn't feel so bad." And that's not the right answer. And we're all guilty of that as parents too, by the way. We're all I told you so, Monday morning quarterbacks for our kids. So we've got to get our teens to get some help. Or then most teens are not close with the school counselors. And that's why that's a fairly ineffective program nationally, school counselors. And they're busy trying to get all the kids off to college and do standardized tests and all those other things. But if you can get your teen just to type the word brighter into 741-741, they're going to have an interesting conversation. And by the way, the first question that they're going to ask almost universally is, am I the only one feeling this way? Because that's part of isolationism, is that they feel broken. You're broken. And so, when you were a teen, you were a kid, and maybe I could say this from the boys' point of view, as a boy, on Saturdays and Sundays, we played basketball or football or baseball, we just picked it up. And so from the boy point of view, if Jimmy and I got into a fight on Saturday, and we literally, and the boys get into fights, on Sunday, we needed each other because we're either on the same team or the other team again. And somehow socially, we learned how to make up and just move on. Girls are a little bit tougher because they can.
Oh, yeah. You're not kidding.
but look at the skill we just learned. Jimmy and I just learned. Today, if Jimmy and I have a fight on Saturday, then somewhere during the week, Jimmy's mom is getting together with my mom and they're having a discussion about it. Then they're calling us in to talk about it. Then we're shaking hands and artificially making up on this whole thing. And we're back to normal life. And we didn't learn anything. We didn't learn any social skills. We didn't learn that you can have a fight on Saturday and survive and be good on Sunday. We learned none of these skills that today, because every kid is in organized sports for the most part, they don't learn any of that. And so that's a huge change in society. That's a big change. And that cell phone, and these are both omnipresent, heavy mental burdens in most of the negative weigways that are on today's teenagers.
So what kinds of things do you send them on these cell phones and to help them while they're retaining their privacy and dignity to affect how they're thinking, where they're going with all this stuff? Go ahead.
For the teens, there's a teen survival toolkit that we send them. They can download it for free. There's no advertising. They're never going to get an ad. That helps them ask themselves questions, maybe even help them ask their parent a question or two. Because we're going to try to teach the teen to even ask you, Grandma, how's your day? What do you do in the afternoon, Grandma? They have to learn how to ask you a question too.
Yes.
For the parents, it's a parent survival toolkit. So we teach them that. We don't send teens automatic updates because we don't have permission to do that, but we post all the time on TikTok and Instagram. So teens can go to this and they could just get some information for free, and it's not repetitive. It's all around the country. It's not repetitive. They're not going to be on a mailing list, so they don't get sold something in there. And we're really careful about that. And all of that, TikTok, our texting program, Instagram, it's all anonymous. So none of them have to say, my name is Jimmy Weinberg and I'm feeling sad. It's not like an AA program at all. They can make up a name. They won't even be asked their name. And if they're on the texting program, the person at the other end would say, what would you like me to call you?
That's fantastic.
You know what your name is. What would you like me to call you?
That's fantastic. You can tell you've had a lot of really good advice and guidance as you've put this together. And I think it's so admirable. And I also know you have a newsletter, and people get in their inboxes mental wellness tips. Is this every day they get a mental wellness tip?
No, it's twice a month. We do original writing here. And by the way, all these have been published, and every major wire around the country has published us, from Yahoo to Google to Yahoo Finance to Bloomberg to Mental Awareness to magazines.
Fantastic.
Articles. And so I am a writer. I'm a voracious writer. I love to write. I have a writer now on staff that works 40 hours a week because I own a financial services company as well. So we publish both of them, and they get all around the country quickly. So we create original content. There's plenty of on the internet if you're looking for content, by the way. You can just type teen depression. There's a ton of stuff out there. It's just everywhere. But unfortunately, the first six or eight sites are there to sell you something. And we don't sell you anything. So we are publishing, we're giving teens, parents, schools ideas twice a month.
You want to give us an example of a mental wellness tip that you've given out to people? Does
Oh,
one come to
absolutely.
mind? Give us a mental wellness tip. That
Oh, well,
might
just
get-
besides make dinner cell phone free. That's my number one tip, remember. Take a walk with your teen, talk in the car. Those are all part of it. And then find out from your teen about all their friends, what's really going on. Those are 4 things. If you could do those 4 things, you're 90% of the way there.
There. So let me ask you another question. What happens if your teen has a friend that's a red flag? You don't like this kid and he's not a good influence. How do you talk to, and your teen is very devoted to this kid? How do you handle that?
Boy, that's a real tough question, because sometimes teens have more loyalty to their friends than anybody else. You may want to be upfront. You may want to say, I'm really concerned about Jimmy, and I'm concerned about his influence on you, because you're a great kid with a great future. You've got lots of things happening for you, and I think Jimmy's in a little bit of trouble. How about if we try to get Jimmy some help? Would you be open to helping your friend? And then we have all the same resources. And I said, well, I don't know if Jimmy would help. He said, well, you think Jimmy would text anonymously to somebody where that nobody knows it's Jimmy? Because maybe Jimmy's home is in a state of dysfunction and he can't go to his parents, but he can go directly to a texting program and get some help right now. And maybe he'll build up the confidence to say, how do I reach my mother? Because look, my daughter had a friend. Every month that she would visit her, another guy would come out in the morning from the bedroom because she was single. And my daughter, I finally had to say, you can't go over there anymore. You just can't.
Yeah, but that's great advice, Elliot. What else would you like our Grief and Rebirth audience to know about A Brighter Day and addressing the stigma about mental health and stopping this tragedy of teen suicide? You got any last?
I do.
Go ahead.
I'm a big fan for hands-on. You're in the New York market. I can tell you, New York people are very direct versus California people that can be very direct. I'll give you a quick example. You have a lovely hairdo, so I'm not really picking on your hairdo. If let's say you weren't sure about it, whatever it was, in California, they would say, oh, it's lovely and it's beautiful. And, next time you get it, you could change it around so it fits more. And they're saying to themselves, boy, that Irene's got the worst hair I've ever seen it with. In California, they would just say, boy, Irene, who cut your hair? Did you fall asleep?
Right. That's New York. Yes, absolutely.
And so I come out of the world that sometimes direct, a frontal assault can be really good. Sometimes you need to take that side assault, but conversation and understanding and asking great questions and massaging the way somebody thinks to get you good answers is so important. From my point of view, we call ourselves survivor. I don't like the term, I'm a survivor. I don't like that. But that's the word that they use for family members of people who committed suicide. And you're not even supposed to use the word commit because that implies a crime, so they took their life. Whatever. You can't use ADD, now it's ADHD, whatever the terms are. I think we all know what's really going on behind the scenes. The key is to be a good question asker. For you, you don't want to get to the point where your child's starting to hurt themselves, or your child's walls, there are 6 walls in a room. If those walls are getting blacker and blacker, which is what I believe happened to my son, then he's going to wake up one day, or she's going to wake up. By the way, boys commit suicide 4-to-1 over girls at that.
Isn't that interesting too?
Yeah, even though the girls' number of suicides is skyrocketing around the country, boys are so much more violent about suicide than girls are. But I imagine for my son taking his life, he just reached that point in school that day that yesterday was horrible. Today's even worse. Tomorrow's going to be even worse than today. Nobody's going to miss me anyway. Why bother? And I think that's what suicide is. So you've got to disrupt that pattern and not allow all those walls to get black. And, the shade before black is gray. And so if you can get in that gray world and ask good questions, maybe at some point you can unblack it and ungray
Turn it around.
That's right.
That's such great advice. It really, really is. And tell me, what is the Elliot tip for finding joy in life?
Oh, okay. So I'm very fortunate. I remarried back 17 years ago. I've been together with a woman 17 years. I consider myself very blessed that I have a wife that's my partner here and interested in me, which is proof that there's life after divorce. I have friends that have really circled the wagons around me, some family members that have been great. I love what I do. I have several entities. This is one of them, and a financial company. I don't like it. I love what I do. I've created work to be love what I do. Unfortunately, I had to give up ice hockey after that because you only have so many surgeries. So I get to the gym. I like golf. I don't love golf, but I like going to the gym. And, if I could lose a couple pounds on my waist, and if you know a good plastic surgeon that can suck it off, not going to give us off, then that'll be great.
Or you can change your mindset to say, I will accept myself for the way I am.
Not quite there, but I appreciate that.
Stop judging myself.
Yeah. I do live with a lot of humility, and that's not the same thing as being humble. I think humble is good, but humble could be at the wrong time. Humble could be the bad thing, but humility, I'm very thankful that I have twins. I'm thankful that I have 2 stepchildren and a wife, that lots of family, but I'm also thankful that I had Jake, the son who's not with me, for 19 years. And I always end with my conversation at the cemetery, with my conversation with Jake and my conversation with God, whether you believe in a God or not. But my conversation with God is, thank you for the 19 years that you gave me, Jake. Way too short, but longer than some have had it.
That's absolutely true. That's beautiful. I totally understand that. Wonderful. Elliot, the mission of A Brighter Day is to unite stress and depression resources with teens and their parents with the goal of stopping teen suicide. Through your organization, you're not only addressing the stigma around mental health, but you're also literally saving lives. And through these efforts, you found healing and transformation in your own life. Thank you for the tremendous good A Brighter Day is doing in our world. And I thank you from my heart for this very informative and incredibly helpful interview today for so many people. And here is a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you're watching here on YouTube, be sure to click subscribe below so you will never miss an episode.
Thank you, Irene, for having me on.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you, Elliot. As I like to say, to be continued. Many blessings and bye for now. And thank you so much, Elliot.
Thank you.
I think your organization is marvelous, and I can't wait to tell lots of people about it. To be continued.